Hi there and welcome to tutorial number 60. Today we're going to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the launch of the Roland D50. And of course we've now got the Roland D05, which is the boutique version. So I've recreated some of those sounds on the Studiologic Sledge, and we're going to be having a look at some of them today. The most famous one, the Fantasia, we did on tutorial 59. So here's soundtrack. And I'll show you how I got that sound. So we'll go over to an init setting. There we are. And I've just set up one oscillator on this, which is oscillator 1. But of course we need all three in. All three are going to be an 8-foot pitch on a pulse waveform. I'm going to be doing a little bit of pulse width modulation. So now that I've got the pulse width set up on each oscillator, let's do the pulse width modulation as well. So it's LFO1 sine wave, pulse width modulation, speed 24. And depth 20. Now, not a great deal of movement so far, but once I've altered the actual pulse wave here, you'll be able to hear that. So, oscillator 1, pulse width 15. Oscillator 2, pulse width 50, smack in the middle. Oscillator 3, pulse width 72. Now we could increase the depth a little bit there actually. Let's go to about 39 on that one, just to give a little bit of movement. The main pitch of the soundtrack comes from oscillators 1 and 2, but I'm going to introduce a little bit of a pitch change on oscillator 3, and I'm going to take that up by 7 semitones, which is musical fifth. There we are. I'm also going to detune these a little bit. So oscillator 2, detune -8, and oscillator 3, detune +4 or +3, thereabouts. Okay, that's the basic sound. We're going to be using a band pass filter. Now what that does is it selects frequencies in the middle of the audio range and cuts off the top and the bottom, so thereby selecting the middle. So it's a 24 dB slope, cut off 43, quite extreme. Resonance nil, key track 84. And the bandpass filter gives a peculiar kind of zingy sort of sound. So when I introduce the filter amount here of value 27, you can hear a bit of a percussive sound here, but we're going to set that up to be attack 0, decay 81. There we are. Sustain 0, release 73. Amplifier envelope, we're going to need some velocity in this one. Velocity 60. Attack time 79. So a bit of a fade into the sound. Decay 61. Sustain 93. And release 83. So that gives us our basic sound, but of course one of the characteristics of the D50 was it was one of the first synths to incorporate effects. So chorus to give it a bit of a shimmer, rate 23. and the depth there is 50. And reverb, we've got reverb time 100, so that's quite a long time, but the level of that is 65. And there's our soundtrack sound. And we're going to move on to the D50 Pluck sound. Now this might be called pizzicato, but I'll just show you what that is first of all. And there's a very famous track that goes with that, of course. It's Enya's Orinoco Flow, sometimes called Sail Away. Okay, so I'll show you how we got that sound and go over to the initial setting, init setting. Oscillator 1 is 16-foot pitch, sawtooth. Oscillator 2, click that in, 16-foot pitch, pulse wave, and the pulse width is 26. Bit of a buzzy sound there. Okay, and the third oscillator, again 16-foot pitch, but now it's a plain old square wave. Click that in as well. We also need a bit of white noise in there, and select white there and value 90. Now this will become apparent in a second, because it's a percussive sound. The appearance of the white noise will be just like a ch at the beginning of the sound. Okay, so we need on the filter, we need a low pass, 24 dB slope, cut off 31. Quite extreme, but I'm going to alter the amount. The filter amount here is 28. Let's complete this. Resonance 0, key track 73. And the filter envelope is attack 0, decay 64. Sustain 0, release 68. And the amplifier envelope, we're going to use a bit of velocity in here again. Velocity 62, 63, that's right. And attack 0, decay 88. There we are. Sustain 0, release 71. Got the velocity in there, and again that shimmer of effects, chorus in there is the default chorus, rate 20, depth 50. The reverb is time 86. And level 42. Ooh, yeah, there we go. So that's our sound. Now it is touch responsive, so you get a different effect if you play it harder or softer. An interesting thing is if I go through the same bit of playing there with each oscillator, you can hear the slight differences. And finally the noise. And that gives the sort of bit of spit to the sound. So the composite sound gives us our D50 Pluck. Alright, that was my emulation of the Roland D50 glass voices. Now it's quite difficult to get that particular sound because obviously they would have used a voice sample. I'm not using any samples in here, but there's a couple of tricks that you can use to create that upper harmonic shimmer. So I'll show you how I got that sound. Init patch, And at the moment we're not going to use oscillator 1, but we're going to set up 2 and 3. So oscillators 2 and 3, full volume there on the mixer, and they're at an 8-foot pitch. Okay, we're also going to be using some pulse width modulation because both of these are on a pulse waveform. So that's LFO1, sine wave, pulse width modulation, speed 31. Won't hear anything until I put the depth in, and depth 41. Okay, so we need to adjust the pulse width on each of these oscillators, and the pulse width on here is 22, and the pulse width on here is 77. Okay, we need a bit of detuning there as well, so this is -6, and this one is +3. Now, what creates part of the voice effect is to create a higher pitch and use one of the waves from the wavetable. So I'll just show you how I got that. The oscillator 1, oscillator 1 is at a 2-foot pitch, and we're going to alter the semitone there, semitone 005, that's upper 4th. Da-da-da. And let's have a look. Oh no, I'm giving you the wrong information. The semitone there is +11. So that's actually out of tune. It's a semitone away from the tone pitch. And if I click that in, you can hear it sound a bit out of tune. The waveform that we're going to be using, as I say, is from the wavetable, but it's 005. And the actual, what they call the pulse width here, the actual wave is 15. So when I mix that in with the oscillators, or the other oscillators, we've got a peculiar sound, but I'm actually going to back oscillator 1 off to a value of 86. Now by the time I've filtered that, it's also going to give a nice voicey kind of effect. The other little trick I'm going to use to create that high frequency element is to put some white noise in, and that is not full up, but a value of 40. So just a tiny bit. We're going to be using a bandpass filter, and if you remember, that's the bit in the middle. 12 dB slope, cut off 72. Okay, we're going to be using a bit of resonance on there, 65, to create that hollow kind of vocally sound. Key track 84. And we don't need any filter envelope in there, so that the value of that is 0. Amplifier envelope, we'd need a fade in. So we're also going to be using a bit of velocity here, velocity 82. And the fade in would be attack 87. Decay is 61. The sustain 87. And the release time 83. So that's the kind of sound that we've got there, which is the sort of vocally sound, but we need to add the shimmer on the top, which is the default setting for the chorus, rate 20, depth 50, and a bit of reverb in there, time 87. Time 87, level 60, sorry camera. And there's our sort of shimmering glass voices type sound. now the final sound today is going to be this. Which hopefully you'll be able to tell is like a harp. So in its setting, 2 oscillators on this one. The first oscillator, 16-foot pitch. Second oscillator, 16-foot pitch. Pulse wave, pulse width, 35. Now that creates a bit of a reedy sound, which isn't, the square wave is a hollow sound. But we've taken it away from the hollow sound to produce a slightly reedier sound, a few more higher harmonics. We're going to reduce the volume of that to 71. That's because the main body of the sound comes from oscillator 2. That's at full volume, and that's on a triangle waveform. Now the triangle waveform is very similar to the square waveform. If we hear that on its own, it's got odd numbered harmonics in, but not as many high harmonics. But we need the high harmonics from oscillator 1 to give it that sort of pluck effect. So I have to remember to put the frequency modulation by oscillator 1 on this triangle waveform down to 0, otherwise we get a slightly odd effect. So the two together is that. To create the pluck sound, we need to look at the filter, and the filter's a low pass 24 dB slope, cutoff 44. The envelope amount is 27. So already we can hear the sort of pluck type sound. Resonance is 0, key track 85. Set up the filter envelope now, attack 0, decay 69. Sustain 0, release 86. And the main sort of harp type sound comes from the fact that it's hard to dampen the sound, so the sound rings on. So that's all about this amplifier release time here. So attack 0, decay 69. Sustain 0, release 86. And that gives us our sort of perfect harp sound. Now I haven't used any velocity on this, velocity's at 0. I've tried a few velocity settings and they didn't seem to be particularly effective on this particular sound, so we just need to add the shimmer. Now harps don't generally have a shimmer unless they're a bit out of tune, so the chorus effect, the rate, instead of being 20, I've reduced that to 8, and the depth I've reduced to 46. But we still need a bit of reverb on there, time 60, and the depth, sorry, the level, I beg your pardon, is also 60. And that gives us our harp sound.